Wednesday night. Welcome to all my fellow bird nerds. We're going to be covering bird ID, specifically 12 members of the Ardeidae family that we commonly see in our area. And again, just for housekeeping, like Rick had said, everybody's currently muted, and we'll open it up at the end for question and answers. But in the meantime, if you do have a question about what's being presented, go ahead and use that chat function on your computer or iPad or whatever you're viewing it on. You can type it in if you have a question about the birds. Make sure you send it out and post it to everybody, because other people may have the same question, or it may kind of inspire other questions. And we have a lot of bird experts on, a lot of people that are better birders than myself. So I encourage them to answer some of your questions as we go. I'll try to keep track of the chat myself. But if we don't get to something, then just we'll open it up to the questions and answers at the end. So let me pull up my chat just so I can just keep track of any questions. If you're having problems with Zoom, then I would send a direct message to Rick, whose name on this Zoom call is VAAS Zoom meetings. So on the chat function, it's defaulted to everyone. If you hit that down arrow, you can select the host, which is Rick, and he will do his best to get you back online and to observe it. So yeah, again, we're covering Ardeidae, and it covers six species of heron, 4 species of egrets, and 2 species of bitterns. A lot of times during the presentation, I'm just going to use the term heron. This is a generality. I mean, those common names, herons, egrets, don't really have any kind of scientific, taxonomic meaning. So typically just species in this family that are white are typically named egrets, but we have exceptions to that, which we'll see. And the non-white members of this family are either herons or bitterns. But again, the common names, just in many different organisms, the common names don't represent any kind of genetic similarity. I mean, just to hammer home the point, a great blue heron is closer to a great egret. In fact, they're in the same genus than a great blue is to any other herons that we're going to be talking about. So let's go ahead with the first one. So what I'd like you to do is type in the chat for me what you think this bird is. We're going to start with an easy one. I'll give you a hint. This is the largest heron that's in Florida. In fact, the largest heron that's in North America. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so a lot of people got it. Nancy, Kate, very good. Yeah, if you don't like to type it out like I do, you can use the abbreviations as well. Yeah, this is a great blue heron. This is actually the same bird that was on the cover, just a different angle. So great blue heron, as you can see, has a very wide distribution across North America. It's found pretty much all over the place in different habitats. For ID purposes, you really want to focus in on that kind of light colored head with the very bold eye stripes on either side of a white crown. And it's just, like I said, it's a very, very big bird. From tip of the bill to tip of the tail, it has an average length of about 4 feet, but the wingspan is 6 feet. So it's got the same wingspan as I have. But unlike me, who weighs in about 200 pounds, right? Leslie's like giving me a hairy eyeball there. Okay, 200 pounds on a good day. The great blue heron is about 5 or 6 pounds, thanks to all the hollow bones and things like that. So very, very big bird. Let me move on to the next one. Here's a shot I took at Ollie's Pond. Obviously, they eat fish, and they are wading birds, just like all the ones that we're going to be talking about today. Most of the bird species are found in wetland habitat, and they're doing this. They're walking around in shallow water and looking for fish or any other kind of organisms. A great blue heron will pretty much eat anything that it can swallow. So it'll eat, amphibians like frogs. It'll eat reptiles like snakes and lizards. It'll eat other birds. It'll even eat small mammals. And I always mention to people, if they want to see something that's interesting, maybe a little disturbing, then go to YouTube and Google great blue herons eating gophers. And you'll see great blue herons walking through fields and punching their bills down and ripping gophers out of the ground. Again, it's fascinating. It's, maybe a little morbid, maybe. Yeah, thanks. Other couple of things I'd like to point out as far as ID is you see this little, if you can see my cursor. Rick, can you see my cursor? Give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Yeah, okay, good. Right here, yeah, like Kate said, even eating baby alligators. Yeah, that was a big thing that went around. So again, anything that they can swallow, they'll eat. This is pretty diagnostic. This rusty patch on the wrist and on the thighs. That's not an injury. Those aren't bald spots. Those are actually rufous colored feathers. So that kind of stands out. And also these very long modified feathers on the chest and neck. And they actually serve kind of a unique purpose. The great blue herons have a comb-like structure between their middle toes, and they'll comb through those modified feathers and use this kind of powdery down to kind of get rid of the pond scum and fish oils, and just kind of use it while they're preening. So they actually do serve an interesting purpose. Moving on. This is another shot I took at Ollie's. It's not the best shot. It's not in good focus, but well, the reason I included this is because to show the primaries, the flight feathers, the primaries and the secondaries, because normally back like this, you don't see those black feathers, but when you see them either preening or when they're flying over top of you with this big wingspan, you'll see these dark feathers and a great blue. Here's a couple interesting shots. We got this one. We were at Costco. Well, yeah, the one was by Costco, and the other one we took when we were at the State College of Florida, right? And we call this the like the yoga pose, the sun salutations pose. So they're Florida. The birds in Florida, they do sun tanning too. So it's an interesting behavior. Here is a nestling at the Venice Rookery. And yeah, it's an extremely large bird. So if you go to the Venice Rookery, there are great blue herons. They're probably typically the first species that nest on the rookery. And they get big, and pretty much this one is about as big as the adults. Notice that the crown, it hasn't filled in. There's no central white crown, but you're not going to mistake this bird for any other of the herons, really. When I was new to birding, I had mistakenly ID'd a black-crowned night heron as being a great blue. I thought, this is back when I was up in Pennsylvania. They look kind of similar, but if you really know what the nestlings look like, you're not gonna mess that up. Okay, let me point out a couple strange variations, uncommon variations. This one here is a white morph of a great blue heron, same species, but just a white morph. Sometimes it's referred to as a great white heron, but again, it's not a separate species. This one is typically found more south of us, more regularly in the Keys and in the Caribbean. But there are some that are, locally abundant. Like there's one that's reported quite often at North Lido Beach. I still need to go over there and snap a picture of that. Oh, by the way, I should mention this before I forget. This little symbol here, this yellow-bellied sapsucker symbol, is for Merlin Bird ID. And I reached out to Cornell University and asked them permission to use their range maps and some of the pictures of these species that I haven't gotten yet. And they were happy to let me use them as long as I plug their app. So here's their official plug. Merlin Bird IDs, great, got to use it. All right, so anyway, back to the great white heron or white morph of the great blue heron. Again, it's uncommon in our area, but further south, you're going to see it more often. I want to point out that it has a very heavy bill, and this can be confused by a much more common bird, the great egret that we'll be talking about later. And check out the legs. The legs are not black. Okay, so most of the time when you see a very, very large white heron, it's going to be the great egret. But if the legs are this fleshy colored and it's kind of an odd, heavier bill, a little bit bigger bird than you're used to seeing, then you might be seeing that rare great white heron. And I'll have a side-by-side here later just to show the difference between them. And then this one in the lower right-hand corner is what's called a Werdemann's heron, which is again, it's a great blue heron, but this is where the two morphs ranges overlap. And you get, so this example, they have the head of a great white heron and the body of a great blue heron. So Werdemann's, that's another bird that I have not seen in the wild. I gave this presentation in the fall, and someone on the call sent me some pictures that they had seen a Werdemann's down in the Keys. So again, this is rare in comparison to the blue morph, and the Werdemann's even more rare. Okay, here's the next quiz. What is this bird that we're looking at? Again, I'll give you a hint. It's about half the size of the great blue heron. Kind of steel blue all over, grayish legs, purplish head. Anybody? Is anybody still awake out there? Type it in the chat, let us know. Yeah, there you go, Pete. Yeah, you got it. Yep, most of you got it. We have a couple, a little bit of mistake here. That's okay. We're going to be talking about the difference between them. But yes, most of you got this correct. This is a little blue heron. And little blue heron, like I said, is pretty much blue or steel blue overall, gray legs. You'll have a purplish sheen over the head and neck. And then outside of breeding season, they'll have a gray bill, gray lore. That's that fleshy area between the eye and the bill. And it'll be tipped in black tip. That's an important ID clue that we're going to see repeated again and again. Now, and here's the distribution, a much more limited distribution. In fact, this is listed as a threatened species in Florida. But you can see it's much more common in South America. Little blue heron. And again, different genus than the great blue, so the Egrets. Now here's an example of a little blue heron that's in breeding. I think we saw this, I can't remember where we saw this, we took this picture. It might have been at State College of Florida as well in the spring. And you can see how the lore and also, in fact, the bill can actually change colors and they get this beautiful like sky blue lore and radiating down to the bill. But again, still, look at that, it's got a black tip on it, okay? Let's see if I have anything else. All right, so what bird are we looking at now? What do you think? Yep, Pete's on top of it. You got it. Yes, this is actually the same species. Yes, little blue heron. Okay, so if you're new to herons, this might be a one that'll trip you up, but this is actually a little blue heron that's in its first year. So yes, they're white in their first year as a juvenile. And the reason that ornithologists believe that is that they can join flocks of snowy egrets. So most herons species that we're going to be talking about are pretty solitary as far as their hunting behavior. When they're nesting, they nest together in rookeries, but when they're out hunting, they usually are solo. There's two exceptions to that, cattle egrets, which we'll talk about, probably the most gregarious of all of them. But snowy egrets are social hunters. They can be social hunters. And so the thought is that a first-year little blue heron can kind of work its way into a flock of snowy egrets, and it serves two purposes. One, when you're a bird that's, in a group, a larger flock, then the chance of you being a prey decreases, right? It's like the schooling effect of fishes. You want to be one of many, so the chance of you getting signaled out by a predator goes down. But also they found that when little blue herons hunt cooperatively with snowies, they actually are able to get more food. So there's a benefit on both sides of it. As far as IDing, again, it's all white. Look at that bill. Again, it's gray and black at the tip. And it'll always be gray, right? Because it's a first-year bird, so it's not going to turn that blue color. So we have a gray bill, gray lore, tipped in black. And what I really want you to look at is these legs. These legs are described as being green, okay? But they're certainly not dark. They're not black by any means, which it's what you're going to confuse it with, like a snowy, which has black legs. Okay, now what's this bird? Here's another heron. What do you think? We took this one down in, this is down in Ding Darling, right? The Bailey tract, I think, of Ding Darling. Yeah, you got it. This is another little blue, okay? So all I'm showing you is little blues, but this one is probably confuses people the most. I certainly get the most posts on Facebook about it. This is what's called a calico or a pied stage of a little blue. So this is a little blue that's towards the end of its first year. Typically, you're going to see these in like May or June, and they haven't gotten rid of all their white feathers, and they haven't gotten all their adult plumage yet. So they're kind of in this intermediate teenage stage, awkward looking stage. But again, look at the bill. It's a gray bill tipped in black, and it's got those green legs. All right, so we won't confuse it with something else. And just to hammer home the point, and we got a little black on the little blue. So regardless of what stage, adult, immature, or that pied, it's always going to be that black tip. Yeah, okay. So here's the one that was mentioned a little bit earlier by someone. This is not a little blue. I'll make that clear. Take a look at the lures. Take a look at some of the other feathers and colors that are involved. Yes, yeah, you got it. You're right, everyone's on it. So this is the tricolored heron, right? Sometimes referred to as a Louisiana heron. Same basic size as a little blue. So little blues and tricolors I consider medium-sized herons. They're approximately about 2 feet in length and around 3 to 4 feet in wingspan. So what sets this one apart, a couple things. One is that you have a yellow lure when they're in non-breeding, and you have white. That's the main thing, is you have white. You have white on the belly, it's white underneath the wings. There's a white trail that leads from the chin all the way down through the neck. There's white breeding plumes off the back, and that is pretty important because sometimes if a bird is going away from you and the only thing you see is the back and the back of the head, that white plume may be the only thing that differentiates it clearly from a little blue heron. So kind of look for that. It can have a black tip, so that's can be a little bit confusing. It can be a little bit challenging. But one thing that a little blue, regardless of the phase, it's never going to have yellow or this orangey yellow wash on the bill or on the face. Okay, so let's take a look. Yeah, tricolored. And this was another species that is listed as threatened in Florida. And again, the range is quite a bit limited. Okay, it's just another shot. And here you can clearly see that under the wings and on the belly, you have that white color that makes it stand out, and the white throughout the neck. And you can barely make it out because it's kind of shadowed with the reeds in the background, but there are some white plumes coming off the back of the head. All right, and to make it a little bit more challenging, here's a tricolor breeding, and it adopts that blue, that sky blue lure and bill. And this again was at State College. And it's got a black tip on it. But again, look at the the white belly, and look at can you see the white plumes coming out of the back of the head? So you look for white, okay, in the tricolored heron to differentiate it from an adult little blue heron, okay? Here is a immature tricolor that we took when we were kayaking in Mayaca River State Park, I think. Yeah, we were kayaking through all the gators, and this guy came up to us. Beautiful color. It's a little bit more rusty color on the back, a little less streaking on the throat. And yeah, just a beautiful bird, a rusty color, but still it's got that yellow lure. So clearly a tricolor. Oh, one thing I should mention, glancing down at my notes, is, you know, not only color pattern and size and things that tell different birds apart, but you can also look at behavior. And tricolors typically have a much more aggressive feeding behavior. So typically big great blue herons and little blue herons are very patient hunters. They stalk their prey, they pick their shots, more quality over quantity as far as taking shots at fish. Tricolors seem a little bit more spastic. You know, they run around, it seems like a lot more. They'll extend their wings and do a little bit of shadow hunting, similar to another species that we're going to be talking about later. They just seem to be more energetic and more entertaining, actually, as a birder to watch them when they're feeding, when they're actively feeding. So that's something else that can help differentiate between the two. And like Kate said, it's got a pretty substantial beak, a very long, sleek looking beak. So, all right, moving on. What is this species? Yeah, here we got a glance of it. So, yeah. Yep. So yes, this is the black-crowned, what's that?
Go.
Black-crowned night heron, okay? And this is the bird that I mentioned before. When I was up in PA and I was like really new to birding, I saw this little guy and I thought, oh, look at that. It looks like a baby little blue heron. But, you know, obviously I was wrong about that. This is again, a medium-sized bird, medium-sized heron. Not much bigger than the tri or the little blue. Has a bigger wingspan. They're very football shaped, and yeah, like Nancy said, it looks like almost like a penguin, right? They do live up to their name. So black-crowned night herons are typically most active at dawn and dusk. That's probably when you're going to see them being active. They do have a neck, believe it or not. Usually you see them in this football kind of squatty posture, and it doesn't look like they have a neck, but believe me, they do. This is one of the birds. If you came to the live presentation a year or two ago at Venice Audubon, this is one of the birds that my mom was passing around. When it thaws out, it has a neck. It will extend, trust me. All right, that's a whole other story. I don't want to get into that. But a black-crowned night heron, this is the most widespread heron in the world. It's got the broadest distribution. They are very opportunistic eaters. They're they'll scavenge, they'll eat fish, they'll pretty much eat anything. You'll find them in landfills. But they're most active again in the twilight hours. That's when we typically see them. When I'm taking photos of them during the day, they're usually just in this squatted posture. So as far as IDing, you have the navy blue / black crown, and that also spills over onto the back. You have the gray on the wings and white on the head and chest. But from a distance, when you're looking through your binoculars, it just kind of looks like a two-tone bird. Sometimes you can't differentiate the white and the gray. You just kind of see this kind of a light colored bird with a black cap and black back. Here's another shot, same sort of thing. And again, a little bit low light. I think this was over in Lemon Bay Park, or maybe it was in Jack's neighborhood, I think. And it is, again, it looks just kind of like a two-tone bird. Look at that really interesting red eye. And notice the white breeding plumes that extend out the back of the black-crowned night heron. It's pretty neat. Here's another shot. Again, this is over at the Venice Rookery. I was just kind of walking around the southern end by the bat houses, and here's this black crown just sitting there about eye level, just kind of chilling out. His neck's all retracted. But again, you can see the breeding plumes poking out of the back of the crown. All dark bill. And yeah, it's a cool bird. And this last photo, this was, took this at the southern end of Minnesota Scrub. I was in a little swampy area on Minnesota Scrub. You guys might be familiar with it. I was down looking for ovenbirds and things like that. And all of a sudden I just see this big red eye staring at me through the trees. So of course I had to snap a shot of that. And you can kind of see the breeding plume coming off the back there. All right, next species. What do we have? Overall, kind of plain gray bird, but all the color kind of happens on the head. So we got a couple different thoughts on this. Yeah, I think, there you go. Good job, Leslie. She chimed in on her phone. That's nice. Yeah, this is a yellow-crowned night heron, all right? So this is kind of the cousin to the black crown. Distribution is very limited. Now, a lot of the birds that we've seen so far kind of go to any kind of habitat, any kind of marshy habitat, freshwater, saltwater, brackish, whatever. Typically, you're going to find yellow crowns more in saltwater habitats, particularly in our area. But as you can see in their distribution map, when they breed, they can go inland. And the thing about yellow crowns, a couple things. One is they're much more active than black-crowned night herons as far as when they're feeding. So, you know, they don't live up to the night heron kind of label, I think, because you'll see them hunting. I've taken pictures of them at noon on the beach hunting. What are they hunting? They're hunting mainly crustaceans. They're kind of specific to crustaceans. So they're on the beach hunting ghost crabs. When they do go inland, you know, they'll hunt, they like to eat crayfish, and they have a very substantial bill. Here's one that was taken. This was Lemon Bay Park, actually. Here's one. Where did we take this at? You were showing a house. This was in Bridge Street. Bridge Street in Englewood.
Bridge Street?
Yeah. And this guy was, he was out on the dock. But when you're IDing yellow crowns, again, I mentioned this before, it's kind of just an overall gray bird, not very much going on from the neck down, but all the color pattern happens on the head. So it's a black head with the light white or yellowish cheek stripe, and then of course the light colored crown, whitish, yellowish. Yeah, I guess yellow is a little bit of a stretch. But take a look at this bill. Here, I zoomed in on this. This is a bill that's made for crustaceans, right? This is a really heavy dagger-shaped bill. And that's important. This is going to come up here in a minute when we're differentiating between these birds. But I just wanted to take special focus at looking at that bill. It's very, very heavy. And they can pierce a ghost crab right through the carapace and just tear it apart. And they usually shake off the legs and stuff like that. It's very, very hefty. It's really, you can tell this bird has evolved to handle those tough crustaceans. So here's a side-by-side. And again, just to hammer it home from this picture, particularly because there's a lot of light exposure, you can't really make out the difference, at least I can't, between the gray and the white. So this looks like a white bird with a black crown and a black back, right? As opposed to the yellow crown, which is pretty much just gray overall, and a black-headed bird with white or light accents, yellow accents, I guess you could say. So that's the side by side. And again, yellow crown's more active during the day. Yeah, someone, as Lynn said, you see them in Minnesota Beach. Yeah, they're very common at the beach. Whereas black crown's a little bit harder to find during the daytime hours. Okay, now here is a very challenging, probably the most challenging ID to make in this group of 12 herons, and that is the juvenile night herons. And you kind of have to know this because the juveniles, well, first of all, it takes a couple years for them to reach adult plumage. So you're going to see juvenile night herons out there, but they look so similar, right? If you see them side by side, it's tough. You read through some of the bird books and they tell you, oh, the white spots on this particular bird is this many centimeters and this one's that many centimeters, but I don't really carry a ruler around with me when I'm birding. So that's not really quite reliable. But so what do you think? Let's look at this bird here in the upper left. What juvenile night heron do you think that is? Is that a black crowned night heron or a yellow crowned night heron? And why? I'm not just going to let you off just making a 50-50 coin toss guess at it. You got to give me a reason. Why do you think this one is what it is? Okay, I see some people chiming in. Okay, interesting, interesting. Okay, yep. Okay, so I got a lot of good answers. It seems like the consensus that people are saying that this is a black crowned night heron. Yes, you are correct. That one is a black crowned night heron. Okay, so again, I should mention there's a lot of good. I see a lot of good things that people are posting. A lot of people are saying that looking at the difference in the neck, and okay, that can be true, I guess. If again, if it's during the daytime, probably the black crowned is probably going to have its neck retracted most often. So yes, if you're seeing them both during the day, this one's a little bit stouter looking. If you see them at twilight and they're both actively hunting, you can't actually rely on the neck length, I think, because they can, a black crowned night heron can extend its neck quite a bit. You'd be shocked. I got to get some photos of actively hunting. So, but yeah, in comparing to these two during this daytime shot, yeah, this one's definitely the neck is retracted. The thing that I use most reliably is actually the shape of the bill, right? The shape of the bill. If I can, so this is probably a good comparison. If you look at a black crowned night heron, again, they are kind of scavengers. They're not specific. They eat fish, they eat trash, they'll eat anything. And they don't have that very heavy bill as compared to a yellow crowned, right? In fact, if you look, I'm going to get all fancy here and try to annotate, see if I screw this up or not. But if you look at this bill, and I'm going to draw a line right across there. I don't know if you can even see that. Let me change that. Maybe I can make it blue. How about that? Clear all that. All right, let me try this. So if you look at the base of this bill, you see how it's pretty much flat. And if I draw a parallel line here, and then from the top of the bill, if I draw 3 parallel lines, can you see how the bottom of the bill is pretty much flat as a board? And then the top kind of tapers down. Can everyone see that? Okay, as opposed to the dagger shape of the yellow crown. In fact, let me go back here. Let me go back. There's some better pictures I have of this. Get rid of that. So again, this is my favorite picture because it really shows this quite clearly. Even though this is an adult, the shape is the same. If you look at, look at this. If I do That's not going to work. I don't like that. Let's do yellow. If I look at this bill, right, boom, and I do parallel lines between these, right, you can see how it tapers from underneath and above, that dagger, classic dagger shape. Again, that's designed for crustaceans. And I think from my experience, that is the most reliable way that I use to ID juveniles. And let me go back. Whoops. Let me go back to this one. And look, again, look how flat that bill is. Again, this is an adult, but it's the same. The overall shape of the bill is the same for juvenile. So that's my tip. Look at the bill. Okay. Sorry for jumping around there. I hope no one's getting seasick. Okay, the last heron that we have, use process of elimination. What do we have here? I'll give you a hint. This is like the smallest. The second smallest species that we're covering tonight. Okay, but it's the smallest that we call herons, that we label herons. Leslie's in there first with the green. Very good. Yes, that is the green heron. Seems to be a favorite of most people, of most birders. Green that's definitely my favorite heron by far. Again, very small. The average length is about 1.5 feet. Wingspan is about 2 feet. So it's pretty dinky. Let me get a different picture. This one was right across the street, by the way. It was right in Bay Heights Park. He was catching the wind. And I can't remember where I took this picture. That doesn't matter. Was it Ollie's?
I think so.
I don't know. But small bird, beautiful in their adult plumage, right? So they have this like reddish, purplish, I don't know what you would call that. That lavender kind of color. I don't know, reddish, rusty color. Yeah. Rufous, we'll call it. On the head and neck and chest, streaking down the throat. And then they call this olive green crown and olive green back and wings. I guess that's where they justify the green heron. Kind of looks black to me, but yeah, dark colored crown, dark colored back. And with all these different things going on, right? The reds and the blacks and the yellow lore and the whole deal, they're still somewhat challenging to find a lot of times. It's kind of like when we do trips, it's like, who can find the green heron first, right? It's everyone gets excited when they see a green heron because they're very good at hiding and they're very patient hunters. So they're very intense. I'm trying to remember where I took this one at. I don't know. But one thing I love about the green herons is that they are actually one of the few birds that have learned to use tools. I'm sure those of you that have been on walks with me have heard me tell this story a million times, but I'm going to say it again. They learn to use tools because they can bait fish. And this is a behavior that I'd seen play out up in Pennsylvania. They'll take a stick, they'll take a leaf, they'll take a piece of bread, and they will place it in the water and attract the fish to them instead of walking around and waiting and chasing fish. They do that as well. Don't get me wrong. Like this bird seems pretty intense on something that's in the water, but they'll also place things and actually bait fish. And like I said, up in Pennsylvania, I had seen this all roll out. A little green heron was walking across a pond, jumped up into a tree, wiggled a little stick back and forth until it broke off this little piece of stick off a dead branch, walked out into the water, placed it down, and sure enough, within a couple minutes, it tagged a very large fish, a fish much too large for that little bird. Mm-hmm. and it was a little gruesome watching him trying to peck that fish in half to get it down. But to see it all play out, it was pretty interesting. So this one is juvenile, and you can tell because it's got a lot more mottling on the wings, a lot more streaking. The bill is a lot lighter, and it has a little bit of downy feathers sticking up. This was over in Lemon Bay as well. And one of my favorite pictures, this was at the Venice Rookery, and there's actually two birds there. They're two little, just like barely out of the nest. They got these little pin feathers. They haven't even fledged yet. They're mostly down. And these two little little birds are just hanging on. It's like they've been doing it forever. It's just like ingrained in them. They're just like hanging onto those reeds, looking down at the water, checking them out. But absolutely, I mean, these guys got to be days old. They're not. So yeah, right at the Venice Rookery. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm just going to rip through a quick review. Normally when we do this live, I just have people call it out, but I'll just, since we're all muted, I'll just name them as we go. Again, this is, and these are all headshots, by the way, because I had a birding mentor who told me that you should be able to identify every bird, but just by their head. So we're going to put that to the test. This is a white bird with a black crown. There you go. Black crown night heron, red eye, dark bill, and those white breeding plumes sticking out of the back of the head. Large bird. Look at the bill on that thing. I mean, just look in comparison to that. Look at the bill. It's just a monster, right? Largest bird in North America, largest heron in North America, I should say. Very bold eye stripes with a white center crown. That is a great blue heron. I threw in some tricky photos in here just because I wanted to see if I could trick anybody. But this is a breeding tricolored heron. Again, it's got the blue lores and blue bill, which again, outside of breeding, this would be yellow, right? Or yellowish orange. But the thing that you should really focus on is, hey, look, it's got white feathers. It's got white feathers poking out of the back of the head. The breeding plumes are white. Even a juvenile little blue heron don't have breeding plumes, right? So, and of course the white feathers down the throat. Here's a little guy. This is the green heron, right? So you got, again, that rusty color on the head and chest, and the olive green cap and the dark bill. Here's a breeding little blue heron. And again, blue lores, blue bill, tipped in black, purplish color on the head. And I think this might be the last one. This is the yellow crowned, right? So gray from the neck down, all the pattern on the head. It's a black-headed bird with white or yellow accents to the cheek stripe and the crown, and the breeding plumes out the back. All right, moving on. I'm gonna jump into the egrets and the bitterns. So what do we got? The second largest heron that we have in our area. That is correct. I see Lynn jumped in there. Okay, yeah, so different things. Yep, okay, fantastic. Most of you got it. So this is a great egret, right? Great egret. So this is the one that it's actually in the same genus as a great blue heron, right? We call them great egrets. Very elegant bird, very long and sleek, beautiful, beautiful bird, right? Nice distribution. You can see it's very prominent in South America. Let me move on. Here's another shot. Black legs, long black legs, and that yellow bill makes it really, really stand out. This was at Stump Pass last year. And here's a breeding great egret. And you can see those beautiful lime green lures. This was taken at the rookery. Here's, I'll pull back here, and they're nesting. They're probably, I'm sure they're nesting now. Can you give me a thumbs up on that, Rick, if you know if they're nesting at the rookery? Not sure. Yeah, I gotta get over there. So during nesting, they produce these modified feathers called egrets, and that's kind of where they get their name, egrets. But the egrets, very fancy. They can actually stand them up as part of the courtship display. Unfortunately, they were also highly valued, and these feathers almost led to their extinction. I'm sure you've probably have heard that, you know, during the 1800s, someone just chimed in there. Oh, okay, good. nesting at the rookery. Great, thanks, Linda. So during the 1800s, it was quite fashionable to have these egrets as part of women's hats. So they were hunted, not just the great egrets, but a lot of the egrets were hunted for their feathers, particularly these egrets, which only happened during breeding season. And in fact, just to give you an idea of the value, back in 1886, an ounce of these feathers would fetch you $32, which was at the time twice the price of gold. So you can see there's a tremendous amount of hunting pressure on these birds. And this is kind of what led to the establishment of the National Audubon Society, which the great egret to this day is the symbol of the National Audubon. So it's a great conservation success story. There's some places actually in Central and South America where they were driven into extinction and never recovered. But luckily enough, in our country, we were able to save this bird and enjoy it right here in Venice. Okay, so here's our side-by-side. To the left, again, is that same picture of the great blue heron white morph, or sometimes referred to as a great white heron. And the lower right is the great egret. And again, the great egret, very black legs and a thin yellow bill, just an overall much more elegant looking, I don't know how you describe it, very sleek looking bird. Whereas the great blue heron is just kind of a stockier bird. I mean, the bill is just heavy and it's got the flesh colored legs, but it's just a beefier bird. It doesn't quite look as elegant as the great egret. All right. The next bird, what do we have? This is a great shot by Luke Jacobs. This is a great bird. And this is one of the exceptions. This is an egret, but it's not white. Yeah, all right. Pete's in there first with the answer. Very good. Okay, so yeah, this is the reddish egret. Reddish egret. So it is called an egret. It's part of the egretta, but it's in this phase, the common phase that we see is the blue form or the dark form morph. We'll talk a little bit more about the other variations later. This one, you can see the distribution is very, very limited. This is a bird that you're going to see almost exclusively in saltwater, right? Saltwater or brackish water, right? Yeah, so that's a great question. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Yeah, that's a great question, Barbara. Maybe someone has more information about that. I'm actually not too sure about that, to be honest with you, as far as the raw numbers. Oh, but again, so we have this, here we go. So the reddish egret, the dark morph or the reddish morph has that obviously very reddish head and neck, and they always seem to have a very shaggy appearance to them, okay? So this is it's a little bit smaller than the great egret. So the great blue heron is the largest, great egret's next. This is about third in size. Yeah, that bill just really stands out, especially during breeding when the bill will turn pink and about the tip is about half the bill is black, and they'll actually get a blue lure as well. Here's one showing off those kind of bluish legs that they typically have. Yeah, it's just a beautiful bird. But again, if you want to find them, you're not going to find this bird at the Venice Rookery. You're going to have to look somewhere that's salt water. Go to the coast, go to the beach. Very often found at Stump Pass. This picture was at Stump Pass. Or this one I took at Siesta Key Beach, right off of Access 7. It's very common to see them there. Okay, and here is the white morph of a reddish egret. And Just like the great blue heron, this is much more common south, like in the Keys or in the Caribbean. But we do find white morphs of the reddish egret in our area. Black legs and white body, so that might confuse you with a great egret, but if you get a shot at the bill and you see that two-tone bill, right, you're not going to find yellow on a reddish egret, even in the white morph, right? So that's a great question. What's the cause of white morphs? The thought is that, again, they are found typically more in the southern tropical areas, and it just there must be some evolutionary pressure, like they're more successful at hunting with having a lighter plumage down closer to the equator. That's what I understand, right? And the further north they have more coloration to it. Just to make this even more of a challenge, when they're juveniles, this white morph of the reddish eagle will have an all black bill. In fact, a friend of mine who's a naturalist down in Sanibel had sent me a picture a couple months ago of a juvenile white morph of a reddish egret, and he had no idea what it was. And at first you look at it, you're like, what is this bird? It's got black legs, it's got all white, but it's got this black bill. And after we, did a little investigation, it turned out to be a juvenile white morph of a reddish egret. Again, so in our area, you're going to see this more often than the white morph. And then, of course, to see a juvenile, it's even more rare. So, and I'm glad that he was able to snap a photo of that juvenile. Okay, next species. What do we have? What do we have here? Chiming in there. Okay, yeah, Lynn's got it. Nancy's got it. Yeah, very good. Yeah, the snowy egret. Very good. So you can't mistake those feet, right? So snowy egret, the thing that you're looking for is a black legs and a black bill with yellow feet, sometimes referred to as golden slippers. I've heard people say. For some reason, I keep calling them snow boots to help me remember the name that's snowy egret. But then someone told me snow boots aren't yellow, rain boots are yellow. So that doesn't work. I don't know. I come up with some different ways to remember things. But anyway, so the yellow feet and the yellow lures, black bill and black legs, that is a snowy egret. And I also want to point out that if you look at the back of the bird, you see those plumage that's coming off the back that's kind of upturned. If you see that, you're looking at a snowy. There's a lot of times that it's really terrible light and you don't get a good look at the face or the legs, or they're standing in deep water. You don't know what color their feet are, but you see this medium-sized heron. And again, it's about the same size as the little blues and tricolors, medium-sized heron. But you just kind of see a silhouette, and you see that upturn of the tail, that fanning of that tail. You're looking at a snowy. They don't always show that upturned tail, but if there's an upturned tail, you're looking at a snowy. Okay. So here's another example. I just took that really recently, and I can't remember where I took it. But yeah, again, the nice thing about snowies is they show those egrets on their chest. They have them on the back of their head. They have them in the back. So they have a lot of really beautiful plumes. But again, here we go. We got the black legs, the black bill, the yellow lures, yellow feet. But you wouldn't know if it had yellow feet if I didn't snap that shot while I was walking, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's one, and it's not showing that upward tail, right? This was outside of breeding season. So I think there's some color variations. They're not quite as powerful and as distinct as they are during breeding. And I also want to point out this yellow streak up the back of the legs. Okay, and that sometimes can cause some confusion because you normally see them, particularly in breeding season, with solid black legs, but they can show that yellow up the back, right? And here's one that is definitely in breeding. This one's got so many hormones kicking in that it's showing orange lores and orange feet, right? So this was taken a place that we call Shirley's Pond. We just call it that. I don't know why. It's close to Ollie's Pond. And yeah, this snowy was strutting its stuff. A big upturned tail, just incredible color on the feet and the lores. So I definitely had to get a snapshot of that. Okay, next one. What do we have here? All white bird, about the medium-sized heron, yellow bill, yellow legs during breeding.
I don't want to tell him.
But we got orange. You're not going to tell him. Yeah, don't give him any hints. Orange feathers. Yeah, Pete's got it. Yeah. Yep. You guys got it. Very good. That's it. That's the cattle egret. Okay. So a lot of things to say about the cattle egret. One, it's not a native species, right? So cattle egrets introduced. This was a species from the Eastern Hemisphere, introduced into South America in the late 1800s. First recorded in the United States, in the state of Florida, in I believe it was 41. And then it took just a couple decades for it to make it all the way across to the West Coast. And I think I check my notes. The first nest was discovered in Florida in 1953, and it made it all the way up. It expanded its breeding range up into Canada within 9 years. So incredible expanse. And it lives up to its name. Cattle egret is associated with cattle. It's associated with cattle in this hemisphere and in the other hemisphere. In fact, the Latin name of the genus means, I think it means herdsman. I think that's what it translates from Latin. And they are associated with cattle. So it's no surprise, considering that about 41% of the acreage of the lower 48 United States is used for grazing cattle, by far the biggest land use, that once this species was introduced, it could spread very easily across the US, right? And so here again, this is a bird that's breeding. This is at the State College, and it has a yellow bill, yellow legs, and it has that orange plumes on its back and its head and its chest. Okay. Normally, outside of breeding season, these cattle egrets have black legs. Okay, so it's quite interesting how much they change in color. So black legs, still a yellow bill, and a hint of the orange crown, but not nearly as much as when they're nesting. And then another variation is this. This is another variation of the cattle egret, which you only find typically right before they are nesting. So during the pair bonding phase, they get into this really cool looking color pattern. I call this the candy corn bill. You got purple, you got red, you got orange, and you got a yellow tip, right? A red eye instead of a yellow eye like it is here when it's nesting. The red eye and red legs. So all these different color variations, it's really, really fascinating. So again, I think I took this in early April. So they seem to nest later than the other species that we have talked about so far. So this was before that this individual had paired off. So they're really putting on a display showing that he or she is available. And then once they start to nest, again, they go to this color. They go back to a yellow eye and yellow legs, but they maintain the orange crown and the orange chest feathers. And then in the off season or non-breeding season, they kind of dull down. They lose the color on the chest and on the back, and they go to blacklegs. So it's a really interesting bird. The other interesting thing is, as far as wading birds, we don't typically find them wading, right? They're typically they more favor agricultural land, or where the cattle are, right? So, I should also point out that this is the most numerous wading bird in Florida, right? The most numerous, which might be a shock to a lot of us birders, because we're not birding in large cow pastures normally. we're at the celery fields looking at all the marshes and things like that, or at the beach. And that's where most of the other species are. But you have to go inland. You have to go to the cattle. Actually, at the celery fields, if you're on Raymond Road, you can look one way and see all these different heron species that are in the marshes and the wetlands, and then turn around on Raymond Road and see that little cow pasture and find these guys. And there's some overlap, but typically these guys favor the agricultural lands, the drier habitat, and they'll pick off insects and things that are off the cattle themselves, or that are stirred up when the cattle are moving. Another interesting fact is that cattle egrets are actually attracted to fire. So they'll flock to a prescribed fire to take advantage of this buffet of insects that are fleeing the fire, right? So they'll go towards it. They're extremely gregarious. They're the most gregarious, or AKA social, of these herons. So when you do come across them, they're usually in very, very large flocks. In fact, I think I have a picture of here. Here's a shot of, it's not an uncommon sight to see a very large group of cattle egret. And they're not nesting, they're out feeding, they're out preening. They just like to congregate in large groups. They're very gregarious, as we say in the birding community. Okay, and just a little side by side, just to hammer home the point. We have a lot of the white herons together. Down here we have the largest, the great egret with the black legs and the black legs and the yellow bill, long and sleek. The same color pattern really as this non-breeding cattle egret over here on the lower left, right? Black legs, yellow bill, but again, the cattle egret's about half the size of the great egret. And the great egret is just long, and look at the bill on it. It's just incredibly long, probably longer than the width of the bird's head. Whereas the cattle egret's got a very squished, stout, retracted overall shape. It's just more, almost kind of like a black crowned night heron. It's kind of that football shape. And up top, we have the snowy, of course, with the golden slippers, right? And then over here is an immature little blue heron, and you can see those displaying those greenish legs. So the only one here of these three that doesn't have black legs, right? And you have that gray bill tipped in black. So those side by side. Okay, we're almost done. Next species, what do we have? What do we got? Process of elimination. We only have a couple species left. What do you think? I think everyone's out there sleeping. I think I put everyone to sleep. Yep, that's right. Be more specific, Pete. More specific, Nancy. We got 2 bitterns to cover. There you go, Linda. You got it. Yeah, very good. So this is the American bittern, right? So pretty large bird. This is about the 4th largest bird in this 12 species that we were talking about on average. This is truly a snowbird, fully migratory bird, right? So we only get the American bitterns typically between like September and April is when they can be recorded, but deeper in the winter, the greater chance of finding them. Masters, just absolute masters of camouflage. I'm using these pictures from Merlin because I have very few pictures of bitterns. They're very, very hard to find. Even though they're big birds, they're hard to find. So they're very heavily streaked. This is kind of an interesting photo because typically they hide out in kind of brownish reeds and things to kind of blend in because they have that really extensive mottling all over their body, streaky throats, a very large black throat patch that you can see here being displayed. This is how you typically see them. This is how I took a picture of one over at the Carlton Reserve in the end of January. And just through this huge mat of reeds, right? I just happened to get a glance of that bold yellow eye. And I was like, oh my God, I was so excited. Here's a bittern. And the cool thing about bitterns is they stay still. So that's really good for a photographer because they don't move much. And when you come across them, they obviously he saw me way before I got to see him or her. And it stayed still. So it let me manually focus my camera to go through all these reeds and stuff to get focused in on this bird. So very, very happy. But this is typically what they do. They just hang out in these really dense vegetation and they use their camouflage. You can still see the black throat stripe on this bird. And they'll even adopt what's called a bittern pose. And this one started doing it. I think I have a picture when yeah. So I kind of circled this area trying to get a better shot with less weeds. And again, the bittern just stood its ground. It's just kind of like a rabbit, just kind of stood there. You know, you can't see me, I'm hidden, camouflaged. But the bittern pose is when they'll stick their head straight up in the air and use those streakiness of their throat to kind of blend in with their surroundings. And they'll even kind of waver back and forth to kind of simulate the grass waving in the wind. So it's really, really cool bird if you happen to see them. Whoops, I just jumped ahead. I wonder if I can, let me try something real quick, Rick, if you don't mind. I want to stop my share and I want to pull something up. You got to hear the vocalization of this bird. It is the weirdest thing you'd ever hear, right? So let me stop this real quick. And let me pull something else up here. Let me see. I think I have this. Okay. So let me do a screen share here. And I'm going to pull something else up. Hopefully this works. Can everyone see this video? Thumbs up, Rick, if you can see this. All right, cool. Now turn up your speakers. This is the weirdest sound you can hear. Besides all the clicking of the cameras, there's probably about 100 photographers here, but listen to this bird. It's going to start gulping air and then make the strangest breeding song you've ever heard of a bird. I think it sounds like a Can you hear that? It sounds like water droplets. Starting to strike his little pose. Once he thinks he's safe, he'll start gulping some more air. Look at that. That's a classic. Looking at you. Some gulps. Very, very bizarre. I just had to share that with you guys. I think that was super cool. That was from, here, let me turn that off. That is also found from allaboutbirds.org. That's one of the sites for Cornell University. So let me go back and share the presentation. Is that it? Is that where we're at? Yeah, okay, good. That worked. So really cool. Anyway, so moving on, our last bird for the evening. What do we have? So Pete, yeah, I think it's probably both. to be honest with you. So the question was, is the camo for the American bittern for feeding or for protection? It's probably both. It's certainly protection. When I was walking up on that bird, it was using the camouflage to stay hidden, but I'm sure that would certainly help when it's trying to feed, for sure. So yeah, Jack, you got it. That's right. So that is the least bittern. It is the smallest of the 12 species that we've talked about. It's the length is on average about 13 inches, and the wingspan is only on average 17 inches, which is ridiculously small. I mean, the way my screen on my tablet is measured, I have a 17-inch screen. So imagine the wingspan of that bird being the same size as my computer screen. It's kind of remarkable. I don't have any good photos of this bird. I've struck out so many times trying to get this bird. It's very frustrating. Yeah, least bitterns, they're really, really neat, small little birds, but it's kind of ironic when you compare them to American bitterns. You typically find least bitterns and are on the edge of deeper water. So if you're looking for American bitterns, look for very, very shallow, very reedy water. I'm thinking like, well, like I said, I saw it on a kind of a dry pond at Carlton. But if you go to celery fields along the first bird walk in that shallow area, that's where a lot of times people spot the American bitterns. Whereas the least bitterns are typically in the back on the Raymond Road platform, hanging over the reeds over deeper water, seems to be their pattern. And typically, if you see birds like boat-tailed grackles, that like a lot of reedy water, open water, you might keep an eye out for least bitterns, because least bitterns will very often use species like boat-tailed grackles as defense, because boat-tailed grackles are extremely territorial. So they'll go after and mob other potential predators to protect their nests. So least bitterns will kind of sneak in there and create their nests and use the more aggressive birds for protection and cover. So that's kind of what I look for. If I see a lot of boat tails congregating or nesting, then I'll be keeping an eye out for least bitterns. Here's a great shot from Bob Clark. And I think he got this at the celery fields. And I think he got this at over at the Raymond Road. Bob, if you're on, confirm that. This is it's either a juvenile or a female. I'm leaning towards female. And the reason I can tell that is, if you look at this is definitely a male. The buffy colored on the chest and the face, big buff colored patch on the wing. But what makes it a male is it's this dark black, navy blue color on the crown and on the back. Also notice that it has a light bill in the adult. Whereas the juveniles and females replace the black with brown. This one looks pretty well developed, so I'm leaning towards female because it's got the detailed striping on the chest. It's got the big buffy patch. So I would guess that this is a female. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's expert birders that are on here. So side by side, this is probably the most confusing between the two birds, I think, besides the juvenile night herons. These two are very often confused with one another. They're pretty close in size. Green herons are a few inches larger. But when you see them side by side, you really can't mix that up. The dark olive / black color of the green heron extends all the way through the wings. Whereas the least bittern has that very, very distinct buff patch. Look at the bills. And in an adult green-blue heron, it is dark. We saw those juvenile pictures where it's light, right? So that can be a little confusing, but it's definitely dark, and it's got a dark, that reddish rufous color on the chest and neck, whereas you have that buffy color. But as far as pattern, they both have the streaking across the chest. They're all, they hunt similarly. and overall shape, they look extremely similar. So I'm not going to fault anybody for confusing these two species, but if you see that buff patch on the wing, then you're definitely looking at least. Okay, so quick review, second half. Here's the headshots. Half of the bill that's half pink and half black. That's definitely a reddish egret, right? Got that shaggy look, gray body. This is the dark morph. Here's that candy-corned breeding phase of the cattle egret, right? Exactly during pair bonding is when they show this particular color phase. I think it's beautiful, so that's why I put it in there. The green lures, so we got a breeding great egret, right? And here's again that breeding snowy egret with the orange lures. Typically it's yellow, but this one's he or she is really in the mood to mate, I guess. A lot of hormones going on with that bird. So this is the head, so you can't see the wings, so it makes it a little bit more difficult, but assuming that's an adult bird and it's got a light bill and a lighter head and neck, that is a least bittern. Here's the headshot of that bird I saw in Carlton, hidden in amongst the reeds. You have that black stripe along the neck. That is the American bittern. And I guess I showed the green already. All right, and we're doing our final exam. So if you want to test your knowledge, you can take hopefully you've been taking notes. You can flip that over, do a quick numbering, 1 to 12, and we're gonna knock this out quick, right? And hope you took good notes, because for every bird that you get wrong, it's an automatic $5 donation to Venice Audubon. Did I not tell you that at the beginning? Did I not say that? No? Okay, anyway. Are we ready? Here we go. Don't answer it in the chat. Let everyone do their own work on this one. Okay, so chat is off. Oh, I got 2 side by side. We're starting off with easy ones. Okay, so the bird on the left, take note of the bill, gray tipped in black. Look at the lures, look at the bill of the bird on the right. I think everyone's got this one. This one's pretty simple. This was an easy one. Okay, so overall gray bird, all the action on the head. I think you pretty much know this one. If you see the color on the crown, it pretty much gives it away. Okay. Another great shot by Bob. I am so jealous of this picture. Yeah, so he's got the buff patch on the wing. So which small heron has the buff patch on the wing? That is your answer. Hopefully I'm not going too fast, but I think I made these pretty obvious, I think. Okay, so here's another side by side. So the bird to the left, take note of the lure. A little bit of a hint of white feathers along the edge of the wing, right? Very long, very needle-like bill. Hard to see on the right bird because the bill is preening, so some of the bill is hidden in the feathers, but if it was exposed, there would be a black tip on that bird, just to give you a hint. Another good shot by Bob. This one's not quite mature, but you have enough there to work with. It's pretty much a light colored bird with a dark crown. So pretty much giving that away. But you notice that this is a younger bird because it's not really, that color is not extending all along on the back. Right? But I think you got it. Look at that red eye. How can you mistake it for anything, right? Ooh, another side by side. And here you can see clearly the size difference between these two birds, right? Black legs, yellow bill on the left. Black legs, black bill, but yellow lures. About half the size of this guy. Look at all those egrets. Very, very nice. Okay, don't let it fool you. Okay, look at the bill. Tells you everything you need to know. Again, you're going to see these birds in a very limited time frame. Typically June or May and June is when you're going to see them. Light colored legs. They are not black. Okay, so that's another clue. All right, here's a bird, not breeding. It's black legs, a short yellow bill, a little bit of a hint of orange. I don't know if you can make that out or not. These are not the best photos, but you know, this is what you're gonna see when you're out in the field, right? So hopefully you got it. Another great shot by Bob through the reeds. Okay, so that dark reddish color on the head and neck. The dark color extends all the way through the wing. Okay, so that's a good hint. Dark bill. All right, another shot by Bob. Again, the bill is all you need to see, right? Gray tipped in black. What does it gotta be? And Bob again. I'm relying on Bob for all my pictures. This is a great shot. And I think he took this at that spot I was telling you about it at the celery fields at the first bird walk. But a great aerial shot. So very, very modeled, very striated, interesting pattern, good camouflage. A little hint of the black line on the throat, right? That kind of gives it away. Here's a great shot. Now we were out, I was out with Jack and Bob, and we kayaked from Oyster Creek to Knight Island, which is sometimes called Palm Island, or what else is that island called? Anyway, and we saw these three, and we had to get around and get to the perfect angle where they're all lined up so you can see the size difference, right? So this is the largest species that we talked about, right? This is the third largest, and this is like your middle, your average, medium-sized heron species. Okay, so let me just go back here quick, and I'll just rip them off and see. You have to grade your own paper. So we got little blue heron on the left and snowy on the right, snowy egret. And then we got a yellow-crowned night heron, okay, all the color pattern on the head. This is a least bittern hanging out in the deep water on the reeds with that big buffy patch. We have a tricolor on the left and a little blue heron on the right. Okay, look at the difference in color with the lures. We have a black-crowned night heron. Okay, so black crown, pretty obvious, red eye. We have a great egret on the left, the symbol of the National Audubon, and we have the snowy egret on the right. Again, another showing of the snowy. And here's that calico or pied version of the little blue heron. This little blue heron is in transition. Here is a non-breeding cattle egret, black legs, short, yellow bill, little hint of orange on the head. We got a green heron, right? So the dark color extends over the entire wing. There's no buff patch, right? And again, we see a little blue heron. Little blue herons everywhere in this presentation, but this is the immature, right? The first year. Hard to tell with the legs. It's hard to tell, but you can see that it's definitely not black, right? You could call that green, but here we got the face, gray bill, tipped in black, little blue for sure. And there's the beautiful American bittern picture that Bob got. Fantastic. And our trio, here we go. We got the snowy on the left, okay? Even at that distance, you can kind of see a hint of a little bit of yellow at the lure. But again, all black bill, black legs. You don't even have to see the feet. You know it's a snowy. Here's the great blue, okay? This towers over the other ones, okay? And the reddish egret here on the right. So again, thank you everybody for hanging out. Yeah, you missed just one. Good job, Lynn. $5 in the mail. Good. We'd like to hear that. All right. So we're going to go ahead and take off the unmute. So if you have questions or if you have comments and you are able to unmute yourself at this time, right? How'd we got it?